Look, son. It's one of nature's most beautiful sights. The convoy.
Oh no! They're coming in through the back door! Oh no!
People want change. They feel that we are their last hope because nobody else is listening. We're listening, and we are here.
How's it been?
Hey, buddy, it's been good, man. Peaceful. People are in a great mood.
That's what I'm talking about.
Always supportive of people exercising their democratic right to peacefully protest.
Much
Stay
appreciated.
safe.
Thank
Stay safe out there.
you. Thank you.
We're all brothers in this together, and we're here for one cause, and that's to fight for the freedoms of Canadians and for Canada itself. We need our rights back.
We're here for freedom, for what's right for the people, not what's right for the government.
This is about freedom.
That's what we're standing for, is freedom.
I just left the island I live on and I'm on my way to Vancouver for a day, just to visit some friends. I'm exercising one of the fundamental rights as a Canadian citizen, to travel freely within my country. This is just one of many rights enshrined in our Constitution, one that was being tested several months ago when several provinces began dabbling in a very dangerous experiment of attempting to limit this right, among others, all under the guise of public safety. Even here in BC, they tried to block off travel in some areas for a little while. Although it was never legally enforceable, it amounted to nothing more than a massive media and government-fueled intimidation campaign to keep people at home. The fact it was even being considered and attempted in the first place is simply unthinkable. And the fact that so many people actually supported and outright asked the government to do this, well, that's just terrifying. What we've seen over the last 2 years is a lot of otherwise rational, logical citizens who used to rally against government overreach and big corporations suddenly all become advocates for big government and corporations. And they even demand removal of rights and freedoms because they want to feel safe. They demanded that governments start controlling and limit their fellow citizens. Fear is the most powerful form of coercion on Earth. Fear has taken over their thought process. Fear has overridden their logic, their context, and indeed their entire lives. Governments have used fear to control populations all throughout history. This is nothing new, but apparently many folks have never read history books. And that is more dangerous than any virus on the planet. These type of people are a problem. They give government social license to stomp all over our freedoms. They allow this nightmare to continue. And the irony of it all is that their fear is largely unfounded in every way. I mean, we could talk all day about data and statistics, but the underlying fact is that driving a semi-truck across Canada is far, 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 far more likely to land a person in hospital than cold sniffles are. Context really does matter. Of course, exceptions do exist, and there is some risk with what's going on in the world the last couple years, but exceptions to a rule don't prove a rule wrong, nor do they justify driving the population into depression and bankruptcy due to government overreach. Not to mention the skyrocketing number of people taking their own lives and the overdose epidemic. Our Constitution includes the Bill of Rights and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. One of the non-arguments that statists like to use to justify the violation of our Charter is Section 1, which states, "The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society." These people and the federal Liberal government are trying to claim the virus is a justified reason. But of course, this is nothing of the sort, and their overreach is not legally justified. Don't believe me? How about we listen to a man who actually wrote the charter? His name is Brian Peckford. He is the last surviving signatory of the charter, and he is taking the federal government to court because they are overstepping their authority and abusing the charter. He spoke to a crowd in Vancouver. Have a listen.
Why in 1981 we brought in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which wasn't passed by the Prime Minister, it was passed by 9 provinces and the Prime Minister. It's a national document that applies to everyone here today and everyone all over Canada. So understand, except for the creation of the country in 1867, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is by far the most important document in the history of our country. Section 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, what does it say? It says you have freedom of expression, you have freedom of conscience, you have freedom of religion, you have freedom of expression, and you have freedom of the press. What else does it say? It says you have freedom to associate. You have freedom to assemble. And in section 6 it says, you have the right to travel anywhere in this nation, anytime. It also says in section 6, you have the right to pursue a livelihood anywhere in this country. And then number 7 says, section 7 says, you have the right, listen to this one, to life, liberty, and you also have the right to your security of the person. Nobody is allowed to touch you unless you agree. And then section 15 says, to top it all off, we topped it off by saying every person in Canada is equal before the law. You're just as equal as Justin Trudeau. You're just as equal as John Horgan. You're just as equal as Adrian Dixon. By damn, you're really just as equal as Bonnie Henry. And then we've got people out there who are trying to say to me and to others that somehow Section 1 of the Constitution, somehow that Section 1 forgives the government. And that they can go ahead and override those other 4 sections I just mentioned. I got news for them. There are 4 tests that had to be met. Well, first of all, that Section 1 doesn't even apply to our circumstance. Because when we wrote that section, the whole idea was this, that the only way you could override these sacrosanct rights and freedoms of individuals, which, if there was a dire situation in the country, like war or insurrection, a virus from which 99% recover, is no war and no insurrection. And then if you tried to, even if you tried to make it, if you tried to squeeze it to apply, if you tried to bend it to make it try to apply to this circumstance, what did you have to do? You had to do 4 things. Number 1, justify? No, that wasn't heavy enough. Demonstrably justify what you're doing. Okay? Okay, is that all? No. You have to demonstrably justify that by law. That meant a new law, not the existing laws that they're using. New circumstance means new law. Where's the new law? They never went to the Parliament. They never went to the provincial assemblies to get a new law. They tried to use the existing law. They skirted around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms by law. Number 3, using reasonable limits. And number 4, you had to do all of those other 3, but remember, it had to be done in a way that was consistent with a free and democratic society. What they're doing is not consistent with any free or democratic society. It's more consistent with a totalitarian society. So don't be fooled by those who try to tell you that somehow you can skirt around the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I was there, I helped write the damn thing, and they're wrong, and we're right.
Now here's the thing. I'm tired of people claiming the majority this, the majority that, or most people support this, or most people support that. It doesn't matter if most of the population thinks something is justified. That is never a reason to override our basic rights. I'm also tired of big government apologists who think it's okay for the majority to impose its will on a minority. Whether or not we're a minority is actually irrelevant. If I owned this pink pickup truck and 99% of the population doesn't like it, should they be allowed to take it away from me? Of course not. When somebody says majority rules, that is actually code for tyranny of the majority, also known as mob mentality. And that is never, ever acceptable in a free society. If the mob tried to take away my property like that, I would be fully justified to resist and practice civil disobedience. That's all there is to it. Individual liberty is paramount to a free society. Whenever someone says, "Do this for the greater good," it raises the hairs on the back of my neck. That term, in modern times, is most often used as a preface to the removal of individualism, liberties, and freedoms. Pick any subject, it happens all the time. It's a very dangerous mentality. I know I'm not alone in saying this, but I would much rather live in a more dangerous society over being in a supposedly safe police state. All of life is a risk, and as far as daily risks go, the current situation is actually quite a small risk. We must always have the right to choose. We must always have the right to consider our own personal risk assessments and act accordingly. Those that are living in unfounded fear are free to wear whatever they like, inject whatever they want in their own bodies, and act accordingly. But they do not get to dictate my choices, not even if there was a real emergency. Our Constitution, much like constitutions in many other countries around the world, is designed to protect our individual liberties and our individual freedoms. The minute we surrender those rights and freedoms in exchange for a collective state of mind, we have lost our freedom. There is no such thing as a greater good without freedom. If we allow governments to sidestep constitutions now, how long before they start using any other emergency, whether real or imagined, to withhold our rights? How long until they use climate change as a reason to limit our travel and confine us to cities, or to dictate how we must live? Are you ready to carry around a carbon passport? You know, for the greater good, of course. So, to the few people out there who are actually against these truckers and patriots, I say to you, we are not a mob mentality trying to impose anything on you. We are fighting to prevent you from imposing on us. Your compliance and continued obedience is the problem, not the other way around. For those who are complaining about the noise in the streets and empty shelves in Ottawa because trucks can't deliver you supplies at the moment, well, I'm sorry, but the trucks are too busy delivering freedom right now, and that is much, much more important. Keep on trucking in the free world, everyone.